Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel, and today I'm going to give you a quick tutorial on how to detect and handle a user clicking or tapping on a game object in Unity 3D. And it seems like a pretty straightforward task, but when you're dealing with 3D games, it becomes a little bit tricky. And this is something that I've had to do in many games that I've created. So I've put together a pretty simple script that I'll share with you guys in the description. So to start off, I've just created a sample scene here, and I've added a cube, a sphere, and a plane, and just given each of them a material with a color just to make it look a bit nicer. And other than that, this is just the basic 3D starter scene from Unity. So the first thing we're going to do is create a new folder called scripts. And then in scripts, we're going to create a new C# script, and we're going to call it input handler. And we'll wait for Unity to process that. That is something that my Unity editor does. I don't know what that is. All right, and before we actually get started with that script, I'm just going to do something in here. I'm going to create an empty game object, also called input handler. So it's obvious what that's for, and that's just going to hold the new script that we created. And one more thing that we have to do in Unity, we have to add a tag to the objects that we want to be clickable. So the goal for what I'm building here is going to be something where you can click or tap, if you're on mobile, on the sphere or the cube. And then once you tap to select it, you can tap a new position and it'll move the object to that position. So first, we need to add a tag. We can go up here in the inspector of the object, tag, add a tag, and we're going to call it clickable. And then we're going to add that clickable tag to sphere and cube. When you create it like that, it doesn't automatically add it. So you got to make sure you go back and add it. And that will let us have just these objects be responding to a click or a tap. So we can save that. And now I'm going to take my script and open it up in my editor. Now that we have our starter mono behavior script from Unity, we're going to get rid of the start method because we won't be using that in this case. And we're going to add in a couple pieces of code that I'm just going to paste in here. So this is the first one. This handles touch input on mobile devices, or touchscreen devices, I guess. And this is going to use the input.touch count and get the first touch. So in this case, I don't care about dragging gestures, long touches, multi-touch. I'm not really worried about that because this is just a basic demonstration, and I can maybe make another video on more complex touch gestures if that's something that people are interested in. But I just care about a simple tap gesture. So I'm just going to look for the first touch, and I'm going to look for the touch phase.began. So this will register the first time that a user touches the screen, and it won't register any other ones until they stop touching the screen. So when that happens, we want to call a handle click method, and we'll just pass in the position of the touch, which is a vector2. And we'll also paste in one more piece of code into the update method, and this is what I use for handling a mouse click, it just checks for the left mouse button being clicked, which uses the value fire1 into the input.get button down. And we'll also handle that using the same handle click method, which we'll create in a second, and we'll pass in the position. And even when I'm building a game for a touchscreen, I always like to add in mouse controls as well, because that lets me play the game right in the Unity editor for testing, and is just really useful. So that's all we're going to be doing for the update method. And now we can move on and we can create the handle click method that we'll be using up here. So I'm just going to paste this in from my notes, and we have handle click. It takes one parameter of vector3 screen click position, and the first thing we're going to do here is we're going to use the Unity raycast system. So basically what we're going to do here, and the reason we have to handle it this way, is when the user clicks or touches the screen, they are selecting a point on the screen in 2D space, in screen space. So they're getting a coordinate on the position of the screen that they touch. But these objects, the cube and the sphere and the plane, exist in the 3D space of the game world, which is world space versus screen space. And that is actually a problem, because just given the screen space position, we don't know whether or not the user is actually clicking on anything in particular. So what we do is we use the raycast system, and you can imagine if you're looking at this game scene that I've created, imagine yourself holding a laser pointer and shining it on the screen so that you're pointing it at this red cube. And imagine that laser extending into the game world so that it goes straight out and hits the red object, the red cube, so that you don't actually see the side of that laser. It's just directly straight out from the camera. And that's essentially the ray that we want to draw. And we're going to check for that ray colliding with any game objects. So we use camera.main.screenPointToRay to draw that line straight out from the screen at the position that was clicked. And then we also initialize an empty raycast hit variable, and that is going to store information about any object that we do hit. So we just leave that empty for right now. And then we use physics.raycast and pass in the ray and the ray hit. And that does its Unity magic, I guess, and draws that line that we've created and outputs anything that we might hit. And next from there, I'm just going to paste in some more code from my notes. And this is the next step. We're going to take this ray hit, and this, so we put this physics.raycast in an if statement. So we'll only enter this code block if it actually hits something. If it didn't hit anything, then we won't enter here. So in here, we're assuming that we've hit something, and we're going to just get the transform of that object, and we're going to check the tag to see if it has that clickable tag that we added earlier in the editor. And if it does, then we know that we want to handle that click. So we can get the clicked object, actually its transform, and I just realized I forgot to create that earlier. So why don't I do that right now? I'm going to create a public transform clicked object, and this will just be a variable to hold whatever object we've clicked in order to select it. So we store the object that we've clicked, and then we're going to reset the ray and the ray hit to just new objects, just reinitialize, reset them so that they're ready for the next click. And I'm realizing that we maybe didn't need to do this. I put this together from a previous project where I think I might have had this in a different statement. We should be actually recreating it here. So I wonder if it would work not including that. I'm going to try that. Okay, now that we have that, once we select an object, we want to be able to click anywhere else in the scene and move the object to that spot. But if you go back and look at the scene, if you click at this spot, in 3D space, we don't know which point you're actually clicking, because it could be anything on that line that extends straight out from the screen at the point you click, similar to what I was talking about before with the ray. So we need to actually just limit the user to two axes, 2 dimensions. So we're going to keep the objects at the same Y level, and we're just going to imagine a plane at that level, and the user can click a point on that plane, that imaginary plane, and that's the point for the X and Z axis that we'll move the object to. And the code that I'm going to bring in for this is actually very similar to the logic that I just explained. So we're going to just drop this in here for my notes, and we're going to actually draw a new plane to represent that imaginary plane on the X and Z axis. This plane, the face of it, is going to face upwards on the Y axis in 3D Unity space. And we're going to put that plane at the position of our clicked object. And we're actually going to use the same ray up here for our clicked point, extending straight out from the camera. And we're just going to we're going to use this float variable, just a utility variable, and that is going to find the position at which our ray collides or goes through this plane. So just to go back here for a second, imagine a plane like this gray plane, but it goes directly through this cube, and then we're drawing our line straight out from the camera, and that line is going to go through the plane at some point, and we want that position. And that's what we're going to get when we call ray.getPoint and pass in the distance. And we're just going to take that point and assign it as the new position for our clicked object, because that's what we want to do in this case. All right, just gonna save that and see if we get errors. Well, that's rare that I don't get errors when my Unity scripts compile. All right, so we're just gonna run that. I'm going to click our GameObject and click over there, and it works. And we can switch back and forth in which object we want to select. It'll just override that previous variable value. There we go. And if we click, oops, you see we got it. Let me just do this again. This is just a basic example, so I didn't have a way to clear your selection. But if we click outside of that, it's not doing anything. And that's because we only gave our clickable tag to these objects. All right, and that is how you can handle clicks and taps on a game object in Unity. And I didn't actually show the tap on a mobile device, but it works just the same way with this code in the update. And that's the tutorial. It was a pretty quick and simple one today, but this is something that I've used in many different games. And it took me a while and some searching to figure out the cleanest, easiest way of handling this. So I hope you learned something today, and please subscribe to my channel if you want more videos like this. Let me know topics you might want to see in future videos, and even just leave a like on the video to let me know if this was useful for you. And thanks for checking out my channel.